Christian doctrine says God created everything ex nihilo, or out of nothing, which is a feat of unimaginable power. This concept has important implications and arises from biblical concepts throughout Scripture and became official doctrine through the debate on the resurrection. To be clear, this is biblical. But what if I told you that's not what Genesis 1 through 2 is actually about? People have linked this idea of creation ex nihilo to Genesis 1 and 2. And as a result, they have an idea that this Hebrew word create used in Genesis 1 and 2 means created out of nothing. And this is false and has led to a misunderstanding of the text. Let's talk about it. In this video, I'm continuing a series I started on Genesis 1 through 3. In the first video, I explained with evidence that Genesis 1:1 does not say, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth," as it says in the English translations of that verse. But rather, the correct Hebrew rendering is "when God began creating the heavens and the earth." Then, in the second video, I showed that the cultural context of Genesis 1 reveals that Genesis 1 was a response to the creation myths of the time, correcting their corrupted theology and showing that Yahweh, the God of Israel, was the one true creator God worthy of worship. And the false pagan gods of the pagan nations around them were weak and not worthy to be worshipped. And in the third video, I showed how the creation story was about God ordering a cosmic temple rather than being about the material creation of the universe. If you have not seen those videos, I encourage you to watch those in order to understand the framework that we're going to be building on in this video. Link for that playlist is down in the description and the pinned comment below. So let's pick up where we left off. So if Genesis 1 through 2 is about a cosmic temple and about Yahweh showing that he is the one true God, and not about the material manufacturing of the things mentioned, then why does it use the word to create if things aren't actually physically being created in this chapter? Well, first we need to talk about what the word create even is. The Bible wasn't written in English, so it didn't use the English word create. In Hebrew, the word used that we translate as create is bara. So this Hebrew word can actually mean to make, to shape, to produce or create, to form or fashion, to carve out, and can even be used to speak of cutting, like it is in Ezekiel 23:47, or even to fatten or fill out, as it is used in 1 Samuel 2:29. The context, obviously, in which it is used will give us indication for how the word is to be translated. This word, bara, is used 54 times in the Hebrew Old Testament. Let's look at some of those uses. Psalm 51 uses the word bara in a very well-known verse. Psalm 51:10 says, "Create, bara, in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me." Now, if the word bara meant to create out of nothing, this verse wouldn't actually make sense. This is not saying, materially create in me a clean heart out of nothing. He is asking that his heart would be made clean. His heart that is already there, yet it is considered bara'ing, or creating. Isaiah 57:19 says, "Creating words of praise, the Lord says, peace, peace to the one who is far or near, and I will heal him." This verse speaks of God creating praise upon the lips of Israel. And the whole context is about God transforming the mourners and weeping in Israel to praise, not creating them out of nothing. The praise will come from the language and words that already exist. Isaiah 65:18 says, "Then be glad and rejoice forever in what I am creating, for I will create Jerusalem to be a joy and its people to be a delight." This refers to Jerusalem being created by God to be a place of joy. But Jerusalem already physically existed. He isn't creating this out of nothing. Or what about Ezekiel 21:30? Ezekiel 21:30 speaks of God judging the Ammonites in the place where they were created. This does not mean the Ammonites were created out of nothing. They were born through their parents, and the Ammonite group was made out of an existing group of people. So notice that there is nothing in the word create or bara, that demands creation out of nothing, ex nihilo. There are places where bara could mean material manufacturing, but it's never a necessary reading. For example, Genesis 5:2 refers to how God made them male and female. But scholar John Walton notes, the Hebraic syntax more refers to them being assigned the roles of male and female, not necessarily a material creation. The Hebrew syntax of that verse points to the idea of roles being assigned, male and female, not so much male and females being physically, materially created. So that verse does not necessarily require material manufacturing. So although the word bara at times could be referring to material manufacturing out of nothing, it is not a necessary reading anywhere in the Hebrew scriptures. Yet there are times when it necessarily has to be referring to something other than material manufacturing out of nothing, like the examples we looked at. So what do these examples show us that the word can speak of? Create in me a clean heart. This is a way of saying, make my heart function properly the way you want it to function. Creating words of praise. This is a way of saying, make my words function as praise instead of as mourning and weeping. Creating Jerusalem to be a joy. Make my city function as a joy in the earth rather than a condemnation. Creating a society of people. Make a group of people function as a society. So the word bara, or create, can speak of bringing function out of pre-existing material. So do we see in Genesis 1 and 2 this idea of function and this idea of pre-existing material? And the answer is yes. For the pre-existing material part, we covered that in video 1 in this series about Genesis 1:1 and the correct translation of that verse. If you have not seen that, I encourage you to go down to the pinned comment below or the description and watch video 1 where I show that the text does indicate there was pre-existing material. But we'll set that aside for a moment and let's talk about function. Let's read Genesis 1:1-5. When God began creating the heavens and the earth was formless and empty. Darkness covered the surface of the watery depths, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. There was evening, and there was a morning, one day. So on day 1 of this story, we see God's first creative act of Genesis 1. He baras, or creates, light. Then the context tells us why. He is dividing the darkness and the light is to function as day, and the darkness is to function as night. So we can see that in the very first creative act, he's assigning function to what's happening. Light is day, dark is night. He's giving function to it. Let's keep reading and read about day 2. Genesis 1:6-8. Then God said, "Let there be an expanse between the waters, separating water from water." So God made the expanse and separated the water under the expanse from the water above the expanse, and it was so. And God called the expanse sky, or heaven in some translations. Evening came, and then morning, the second day. Now, my point here is not to deal with the firmament, that expanse, the word firmament in some translations. Some people use this to speak of a literal dome only over the earth and think the earth is actually flat. I cover that in a video I have debunking the claim that the earth is flat according to the Bible, and that link is down in the description as well. I encourage you to watch that video. But I'm not going to talk about what the expanse is or what the firmament is, other than to tell you it's the sky. But I want to focus in on function here. On day 2, the word bara is not actually used, but it's implied that he's creating. And what does it tell us? Function. The expanse, the sky, was to separate the waters from the waters, and it was to function as sky. It had a purpose. It's to separate the waters from the waters. Let's look at day 3. Genesis 1:9-13. Then God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the gathering of the water he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the earth produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and fruit trees on the earth, bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds." And it was so. The earth produced vegetation, seed-bearing plants according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Evening came, and then morning, the third day. So on day 3, the dry land is created. And what does it describe? Function. The dry land functions to bring forth vegetation. What about day 4? Genesis 1:14-19. Then God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate the day from the night. They will serve as signs for seasons and for days and years. They will be lights in the expanse to provide light on the earth." And it was so. God made the 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule over the night, as well as the stars. God placed them in the expanse and of the sky to provide light on earth, to rule the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. Evening came, and then morning, the 4th day. So on day 4, there is the baraing, or creating, of the luminaries. What does it tell us? Again, function. The luminaries are to serve for signs for days and months and years. They're to provide light and to separate day and night. This is the how of day 1. How is the day and night, the light and darkness, separated? By these luminaries. That is the important key. These are linking back. I encourage you to check out video 3 in this series, where I talk about the symmetrical order of the 7 days, that it's not chronological but symmetrical. But day 4 is intentionally linking back to day 1. But it's again still talking about function. What about day 5? Genesis 1:20-23. Then God said, "Let the water swarm with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the sky." So God created the large sea creatures and every living creature that moves and swarms in the water, according to their kinds. He also created every winged creature according to its kind, and God saw that it was good. God blessed them. "Be fruitful, multiply, and fill the waters of the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth." Evening came, and then morning, the 5th day. So what do we see on day 5? Again, function. He explicitly tells them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the seas and the sky. It's your job. It's what you're supposed to do. It's your function. They were to populate the seas and the sky that God has created. So as you can see, just in the first 5 days of creation, we see the context is function. This context is important. God is not baraing in the sense of creating materially all of these things. What he is doing is he is assigning function to them. The sun was already in the sky, already producing light. But what he is doing is he is giving an account to Israel in the book of Genesis, what the purpose is in his cosmic temple. And that becomes important as we continue to move through this story. So what about day 6? Land animals and mankind are barad and given a purpose. How does this idea of function play into the baraing of humans? And how does that connect to being made in the image of God? That is actually the next video in this series. Subscribe so you don't miss that. And until then, check out this video where I address the idea that the Trinity is not illogical.